I love that Tanner is named the Great Hall. It sounds very like, I don't know,
Very,
there's even
very
superheroes or
official.
something. Yeah.
Like the wizard from Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
Hi, friends. Thank you so much for joining the Church of the Larger Fellowships live. Can you tell we're live? Live weekly podcast broadcast of The View, Voices of Unitarian Universalism. Today, we are coming to you with a show about some new pathways in Unitarian Universalism. And before we get to that, we'll do our usual co-host roundup. And I am Cristina Rivera, she, her pronouns. I'm coming to you from the beautiful island of Borinquen, also known as Puerto Rico, where it is absolutely gorgeous outside. Little tiny bit overcast, but it's starting to burn off, and we'll get to some clear skies, and then of course it'll rain at 4 o'clock as it always does. Aisha, how are you doing?
I am Aisha Hauser. I am in the land of the Duwamish, the Coast Salish people, also known as Seattle, Washington. It is beautiful. Seattle every now and then is like, sure, I'll give you some spring and sunny weather. And we get to see, Tandi is not far from me, and we get to see the mountains. So it is one of those beautiful days. And then, which I tell you all every year leading up to the month of June, I learned a new word moving to the Northwest, January, where the cold and rain sets in, but we are not there today. Today it is beautiful and sunny and just glorious. So very happy to be here with you all. Reverend Dr. Michael, where are you and how are you?
Greetings, beloved. Michael Tino coming to you from the land of the Kitchewan and Wappinger bands of the Lenape Nation, also known as the Hudson Valley of New York. I'm here in Peekskill, about 35 miles north of New York City, where it is an absolutely glorious, gorgeous late spring day. The sun is shining. I could open up my curtains and we'd all be blinded by the sun streaming in the windows. It would be wonderful. I'm in shorts for the first time in 2023 in New York. And so it's all good. It's it's all good. Janine, how are you?
Thank you. I'm well. And I'm going to finish out our beautiful weather streak that we're having here. It's only in the 70s right now in Phoenix, Arizona, unceded Otham territory where I live. And it's only going to get up to 89 today, not even in the 90s. So we're having a gorgeous and not too hot yet spring for us in Phoenix.
So that's like a cold snap in Phoenix, right? 89?
I mean, I don't know if I'd call it a cold snap, but it's definitely unseasonably nice. Usually we've hit 100 by now, so it's very nice.
Yes. Phoenix during the summer is, I sometimes say it's hotter than the surface of the sun. It just feels that way sometimes in outside of Phoenix. Thank you all for being here. UU Roundup, we had some lots of information coming out about the Article 2 Commission and the amendment process for that. Again, it is all of our responsibility to know what that is, to be up and informed about that. So please go to the UUA website. They've got great links about what's going on with the amendment process. The UUA Board of Trustees met and talked about what that amendment process will look like and what the voting process will look like. So please, everyone, as much as you can, get on board and find out what you need to know, because it's their responsibility to put that information out for us, and it's our responsibility to make sure that we are getting in there and finding out what's going on. Other UU Roundup news that other co-hosts may have. I know it's been
I don't know if it's directly UU, but I'm working on it, so we'll say it's UU. Title 42 was repealed last night at midnight. which is a big deal for many of our congregations doing congregational accompaniment, and for those of us on the border doing asylum seeker and refugee aid. Title 42, for those of you who don't know, was the COVID era policy put in place by President Trump, but continued for many years by President Biden. It used the pandemic as an excuse to expel over 2.8 million asylum seekers at the border and deny entry into the United States, even during threat of credible fear. And it was repealed last night. So I've been spending lots of time at the Welcome Center for Refugees and Asylum Seekers in Arizona, as I know many of our UUs across the state have been volunteering in all of our welcome centers, preparing for lots of visitors, guests, and residents to join us here in Arizona soon.
Yes, absolutely. And there's lots of ways to get involved in that. In our local community, we have folks that meet the buses, the Greyhound buses that often transport folks places, and they meet with, lunch. They meet with medical bags, just like Tylenol or anti-nausea meds, because sometimes people, on the buses are getting a little bit of motion sickness. It's super, super, easy to get into those networks and provide assistance. Yeah, for sure. Michael Tino Tandi Rodgers put in the chat that Meadville Lombard Theological School commencement is coming up on May 21st. For all of our grads.
The Star King School for the Ministry commencement is today.
It is tonight. Well, tonight for us.
Our very own Karen Olaoya, Learning Fellow at CLF, will be graduating.
Yes.
Yay, that's exciting.
It is very exciting. We're super thrilled for them. I'll also mention that DRUM, the Diverse Revolutionary Unitarian Universalist Multicultural Ministries, is having a public worship service this evening. Unfortunately, it's the same time as the Star King commencement, so maybe have two windows open going back and forth, but it is open to everyone. This is a worship service that DRUM has put together. Reverend Katie Romano Griffin is the sermonator. It's going to be fabulous, and everyone, BIPOC folks and white folks, are invited to attend.
And it's a fundraiser, so white folks, bring your money to the DRUM service tonight. It's a beautiful event and really a chance for us to support our colleagues of color and our UUs of color in this really amazing ministry.
Yes.
And I guess in another piece of UU news, the election campaign committee, practices and campaign committee has made it official, or the board has made it official. There's only been one petition nominee for any election at General Assembly. So there's one contested race for nominating committee, and the person contesting that race has a long history of joining people who are trying to block our anti-racism work. Let's just call it that. They're open about trying to block the anti-racism work in Unitarian Universalism. So do your research.
Is this for the board of trustees?
No, he's running for a nominating committee position.
Oh.
I don't know why he chose that, but he did. And I don't know which slot it is, so who he's running against, which of the fine nominees for nominating committee that he's running against, but they're all fine, the nominating committee nominees. And he's been very vocal about opposing UUA anti-racism efforts.
Besides getting your delegates together because GA is coming, besides getting your delegates together because there's a presidential election and Article 2, this is another reason to make sure you get your delegates together in your congregations and everyone knows what's going on and is ready to vote. You don't have to attend GA to be a delegate. You don't even have to attend GA online to be a delegate. You just have to register and use the delegate portal to register your vote.
Right.
Zero cost, absolute
Is
zero
this the
cost.
first year that's
Um,
happening? Is this the first year that there's zero cost to being a delegate? Because I feel like it is, or am I, it's not the first year?
I
I think
think
last year too.
Oh,
Well,
okay.
Michael, what do you?
it was either last year or the year before they decided that online delegate registration would be free.
Okay. Which is excellent,
Yes.
because then it makes it more accessible.
So if you're a delegate and registering for virtual attendance, you only get access to the business part of GA at no cost.
Right.
That's what you need access to if you're a delegate and you want to participate.
And if you are a Church of the Larger Fellowship member and would like to be a delegate, we have delegate spaces available, I believe. And Tanner will put the link in the chat to make your application to do that. I say application, but it's really like, put in your name and there's some questions, but it's not long and involved process. We just want to make sure that people are actively involved and are willing to make sure that they get to know what is going to be going on during the business sessions. Anything else? No. Well, we are thrilled to once again welcome to the show Tandi Rodgers and Amy Beltane. Tandi is, yay! So if you were here last week, you saw that we were trying to do this show last week, but we had some bandwidth issues, so that's why we're doing it on Zoom today. So thank you both so much, Tandi and Amy, for making time to come back, because I really, really wanted to make sure that this show, I mean, all of our shows, but this show in particular, that we really had you and had the information message that you have available for everybody. So Tandi is the founding director of Meadville Lombard's Spiritual Direction Formation and Certification Program. Prior to that, she served the UUA, where she holds the record for most titles in a career. And as we noted last week, sometimes the UUA's titles are really, really long, like it's the special assistant to the manager, the director, and so she probably also holds like most of the words in titles as well. Reverend Amy Beltane is the founder and facilitator of the Spiritual Direction Certification Program at Cherry Hill Seminary, which is a pagan seminary, and is on the coordinating committee of the UU Spiritual Directors Network. Amy lives in beautiful Portugal and is a spiritual companion, supervisor, and a process pantheist. Did I say that? Pantheist. Okay. And her son calls her a love ninja. Oh, that's so sweet that that's what your son calls you. Oh my gosh. I love that. Yay. All right. So I'll just start with the question that we had, Tandi, like what drew you to spiritual? Well, no, we're going to start with the question that Kiana today made us answer last week first. What is spiritual direction?
I think of spiritual direction as time out of time with the God of your understanding. And the spiritual director is the one who kind of holds the container for that, sets the table. However, inspired by Reverend Sean Neil Barron, I asked Chat GPT what Unitarian Universalist spiritual direction is. And this is what it told me. It had this really long, and I'm like, oh, I think Chat GPT must be you. So many But I asked it, I'm like, okay, bring it down to a paragraph. And it said, Unitarian Universalist spiritual direction is a personalized and non-judgmental guidance practice within the UU faith tradition. It involves accompanying individuals on their unique spiritual journeys, offering deep reflection, active listening, and open-ended questions. And its aim is to help individuals deepen their spirituality, discern their values, and connect with the sacred in ways that align with their personal beliefs and experiences. I could find no lies. Yeah. Go Chat
GPT. Yeah. Wow. That is wonderful and a little
It's awfully
scary.
wordy though. I wouldn't, but it's right on.
It's right up there. Yeah, absolutely. So Amy, in your world of spiritual direction that you're doing, does that definition kind of gel with you? Is there things that you would add or?
Well, sure. The spiritual direction work is that time together with a companion and a seeker, where you are holding space to hear the seeker's story into voice, and to also hear whatever they hold holy, the divine, spirit of life, Gaia, whatever they hold holy, that presence in the space with you, and to hear that into voice as well. So yes, discernment, formation, unfolding of the human experience, and making meaning out of it.
Cool. Yeah.
So what did the programs at your different institutions look like? The spiritual direction formation or certification programs? What?
Want to go, Amy?
Well, I want to kind of add a little piece in that spiritual direction work. If you hit Google 20 years ago, you would find Catholic spiritual direction. And the truth is that spiritual direction work has been in many traditions and many spiritual contexts throughout recorded and unrecorded history. So maybe I will start with, segue that into my program. Our program works with simple, straightforward stuff. It's a 24-month program, $100 a month. We meet twice a month in person as the whole cohort together, and do lots of dyad, triad, quad work, and work with Moodle, the online learning platform. But we draw from lots of traditions. We have guest speakers, we have guest teachers, we have interviews, we have folks who come in from pagan, from earth relating, from deities honoring traditions. We have folks coming in from indigenous traditions. We have folks who come in from sort of the big three best known spiritual direction traditions: Sufi, Jewish, and Catholic. And the whole, we try to at least touch. So my students are constantly saying, well, that month was focused on this, and at the end of the month, I know that I want to learn more, because there's no way to actually delve deeply into any one thing in terms of the traditions of spiritual direction. We also bring in neurodiverse, gender fabulous folks, and try to help anyone who comes into the program who hasn't got a breadth of understanding, more deeper understanding of the human fabulousness that's out there. We focus on building community, a community of accountability and support in the cohort. That cohort needs to be your community of accountability support onward as you leave the program. And sort of the bedrock is that every person, whether companion, whether seeker, and of course all companions are seekers as well, is whole, holy, and good. So that's my quick summary.
Thank you. Yeah, that's awesome. Tandi, Janine asked in the chat, she wants to make sure that we answer the question is, who is it for too? Who is spiritual direction for? I would say, I guess maybe both as seeker and companion, like who on both sides.
That's a great question. That is a great question. And gosh, I ended up having a niche of when I started a practice of religious professionals in congregations. No great surprise, because I've worked with them most of my life. But then quickly, sometimes it would be like a president who needed to make meaning of things that they would see that you just can't unsee, or things that you go through in a congregation that's like, oh, okay, I'm holding on to my faith by a thread. Help me come back in a deeper way. So it's both for lay people and religious professionals. I've seen children before. I've had parents say, would you accompany my child going through this thing? I've accompanied parents whose children are coming out, and it doesn't jive with the religion of their origin. And so we work through that together. And God, I love that work. I love that work. So I really can't think of who it's not for, really. Yeah, I'm quite evangelical about it. I think, I've talked about being evangelical for Unitarian Universalism, and I still am. But finding that your authentic voice, that I can think of nothing that is more liberating, the thing of taking off all those layers of society, all the shoulds of society, and just shedding those. And what I find it does, and this is why I'm evangelical, it gives you an spiritual imagination for what's possible in your life. It gives you a spiritual maturity as you practice, as you likely develop your own spiritual practices, and it gives you a spiritual courage. And I have seen clients. Now, one of the things with spiritual directors, I will finish that sentence in a moment. One thing with spiritual directors is we never say who our clients are. We never say who our directees are. That's just like a thing. You don't, it's confidential. It is like a cone of silence. You, me, God. That's who's going to learn things unless you're hurting yourself or others. Right. And when do we get that time to share so confidentially all that? It's just so lovely. It's like a soul bath to be able to just say your piece. I just had spiritual direction yesterday, and I'm still kind of floaty with it. But what I've noticed is, like, my clients will go off and make these courageous choices in their life, and I'm like, oh my gosh. And I can kind of go back to the seed of like where it was kind of started to blossom in spiritual direction. And I want so badly to like cheer loudly, and I can't. So, that's always my inclination. So I come out of my room of my office, and I'll just be glowing, and I'll tell my family. I don't tell them who it is. I'm just like, oh my God, I love them so much. And my family's like, I know, you can stop saying it now. But I'm like, but really.
Never stop saying it. Never, ever, ever.
I want that for everybody. I think that's why I begged Meadville. I'm like, please, we've got to do this program. And then President Ortega said, well, we need to develop a curriculum. I'm like, oh, I've already done that. Here it is. Because I have kind of a dream book and have been planning, like, if we could only have a Unitarian Universalist program. I was trained by the Benedictines, which were lovely. But being the only UU in a program can sometimes be lonely. And, when it came to a module on sexuality, it can be emotionally laborious to explain all the things of why that, all the things. So it was absolutely delightful to put it together. And as Meg Riley installed in my brain, we're always in beta. And I love the cohort that we have now, because they're learning together, creating this cohort. And then, like, we just had our last gathering of the term of the year for our first year. And so we gave the feedback of where were you engaged and where were you disengaged and what would you change for the people yet to come. And I'm still kind of on a high from that. It was really good. Yeah.
So you just said we don't say who our clients are. So I hear you saying you can't say that, but I can say it, right? So Tandi is my personal spiritual director, and I cannot say enough how life-changing spiritual direction has been for me. And I want it for everyone I know, and not just religious professionals, but also my friends in movement work, right? I mean, like, we understand what a hit to your spirit it can take to do social justice work and also to do spiritual work with others, right? Like, we can't pour from an empty cup. And what does it mean to have that time every month to focus on my own spiritual journey, and have someone accompany me for that is really like, I couldn't do the work that I do without it. So I guess my 2 cents is that we really need people in both of these programs, Amy and Tandi's programs, and there's other programs out there, because the world needs spiritual directors. We all need it. I mean, the last several years, right, for everyone in every area. But I think of our UUs and folks in movement and our ministers and religious professionals, and how do we fill our cups? I think this is one way that happens.
Yeah, my goal is in 10 years, we will have launched at least 150 Unitarian Universalist spiritual directors. Although we've got some folks coming in, applying for the program who aren't Unitarian Universalists, but they want to be trained by UUs. I'm like, all right, let's go. Let's do this thing. Yeah.
So can you both of you talk about a little bit how a spiritual director is different than your minister? Because I think people would be like, well, isn't that what I'm supposed to be doing with my minister?
Sure. Amy, you want to take it? You want me to take it?
I can just really briefly, when I was in seminary, I was told that a minister generally will do those intense one-on-one sessions up to 3 meetings on a given issue, because their responsibility is the congregation as a whole. And the spiritual director will accompany someone quite intensely over maybe 20 years or longer, or maybe a year, but that's a quick answer.
Yep.
Go, Tandi.
And I absolutely agree that pastoral care is it's contextual. You're in a multi role relationship with a person in a community, and it could be pastoral care, could be with a minister, a religious educator, the pastoral care team, others in your community. I don't know what your community looks like. And chaplain work is sometimes that's also confused with spiritual direction. And chaplain work is very contextual. It's often one-off within a specific, like I think of movement chaplaincy or hospital chaplaincy. You don't necessarily know that person going in, but they're still holding you in sacred space in that moment or a couple of moments. And in spiritual direction, like Amy said, it's somebody over a long period of time, and what a privilege that is.
I'm wondering if you could tell me more about who it is that might be interested in applying to your programs, right? Like what Tanner asks in our chat, what type of education do you need? Like what background do you need to go into this? What qualifications would you need to be successful at it? But if our goal is to get enough spiritual directors to give everyone spiritual direction, we need to have people discerning for themselves that, oh, maybe I'm a spiritual director. Like,
so glad that's asked, and thank you for grabbing the chat. I'm not seeing it outside.
Well, good.
The people that we're looking for in the Meadville Lombard program are people who have been transformed by spiritual direction themselves. So I don't care what your what official academic, that kind of training, don't care what that is. I want to know, has spiritual direction transformed you? And are you the kind of person that people come tell you stuff to? Right? So if you're somebody who your community trusts with the stories, and people come, I don't know, it could be like you're dropping people off at school, and then you're the one who like the other parents or guardians and come ask you like the hard questions, or the person on the bus who the person next to you starts telling you their story. You might be a spiritual director. Yeah.
I wanted to
on airplanes.
Oh yeah.
I was like on the airplane, complete strangers. I'm like, okay.
I wanted to ask how the difference between therapy and spiritual direction, because I do, and when do you all? So two questions: the difference between therapy and spiritual direction, and when there is a discernment to say to someone who's in spiritual direction, actually, this needs to move to
Oh,
You're invited to a therapy situation.
yes, yes. And I tell everybody, you need a squad. A matter of fact, when I first start working with somebody, I ask, who is your squad? We all deserve a squad, especially in these times. So a therapist, I am not a therapist, and I will often like stop and go, okay, so that's something for therapy. Let's put a pin in that and come back to it, and then come back to spiritual direction. So in spiritual, like I go to my therapist to fix something. I've got goals. I've got a way that I want to be in the world that needs a little adjusting. In spiritual direction, I'm not trying to fix anything. I'm trying to get deeper with the God of my understanding. And I'm trying to savor how God and spirit works in my life. Like Amy said, it's the assumption that I am whole, holy. I think you said good, Amy. I think of whole, holy, and precious. And my therapist, while, you know, I know she loves me, whatever, but I don't think she's seeing me as whole. There's some cracks that need some fixing, right? And in spiritual direction, those cracks are filled with gold. Yeah.
So right now, we're accepting applications. So I'm pretty deep into the who is it who might be interested in applying. And what I'm looking for in the applications is definitely not your academic credentials. I am looking for deep engagement with your spiritual path and letters of reference that indicate that you have the maturity to hold others' pain, journey, joy, with some care and responsibility. And then, of course, we build on that in the program. And something I learned relatively recently was quite a revelation to me, that spiritual direction work, this work in spiritual communities, was the care for the human condition in culture throughout the world for thousands of years. Psychology was invented, discovered, created, whatever words you want to use, and in some ways arose out of that quite recently. So sometimes I think of psychology as a specialized subset of spiritual care work.
I can see that. Yeah.
Yeah. I would love to share the kinds of things that people who've applied and graduated from my program were interested in, are doing, what are the guests doing. We have someone who had a massage therapy business and was starting to wear out, and also noticing that a lot of every appointment involved listening to people and going deeper with them, and realized, oh, I'm doing spiritual care. I need some training in that, and applied to the program. Ditto for someone with a tattoo practice. What a deep spiritual experience. A parish minister, same thing. We have people who've left the program and, you know, hung up the shingle. I'm now doing business as spiritual mentor. I'm doing spiritual care work. My care work, one graduate works with forest bathing and spiritual direction. So that spiritual direction work is done in nature while moving through the natural world.
We have to get some names.
Small groups, support groups, being part of an LGBTQI support center, spiritual direction work in that context. A death doula, pet death doula, working with, I'm going to blank on the correct word for this, but the new work of consciousness altering, what's the word?
Microdosing.
Yeah, well, the people have been using this with veterans, the dosing with
Mushrooms? Mycelium?
yeah,
I'm saying mushrooms. I'm thinking
That
mushrooms.
stuff, right? Yeah. So
I know.
these taking the spiritual trip has a long tradition in South American spiritual traditions. And now people are discovering, well, it works really well with veterans. And spiritual direction is a wonderful way to frame and hold those experiences. Art therapy in my purse. Art therapy is also a good coexistence with spiritual direction. And what did and retreat leadership and labyrinth trainers and labyrinth guides. So there's a huge range of things that marries well with spiritual direction, and huge range of things that people have come into the program hoping that they can do and have gone on to do.
Can I jump in? Now I have a question for both of you. So can people hear us even if, I don't know if this is like Wirecast or not?
You have to unmute yourself.
Aisha, you just remuted yourself.
I have been in a spiritual BIPOC spiritual direction group since 2019. And one of the things that one of the questions that was asked early on that I try to go back to is, in certain situation, where is the divine? Like as you experience the divine, right? So that's one of the things that has been profound for me. So I wanted to ask each of you, because we have about 15 minutes left, what's a taster of a spiritual direction you can give the folks who are listening or watching? Like what's a nugget of what you both do? I know you both lead programs, but like if you what's a nugget you can give to folks to think about, oh, here's a taste of what spiritual direction feels like? What's an invitation that you can offer? I like the squad. And actually Tandy told me that I'm in their squad. They were like, Tandy's my director and you were in my squad. I was like, oh, this is felt very good. So I wanted to ask that of each of you.
Well, I've been in a
Wants to go
session
first?
with Amy, and which is I highly recommend. Whenever the ministers are we gather together, Amy and I have been in the same chapter, and Amy will do a tarot reading, and oh my goodness, it's so lovely. And it's not just like there's the tarot reading and then it's going deeper and applying it to like, how is that moving in your life? And I take that with me throughout the year. So Amy, I just want to hold you up. You're really a wonderful spiritual director. I highly recommend. I usually bring to a session a piece of art, or there's a specific artist I love to use, Melanie Widener, who is a mystic Quaker. Listen for joy. I'll find it and put it in the chat. But Melanie Widener, and I'll use her art or a song and just ask what's rising out of it. And so sometimes people will come. I've got some clients who are just like, as soon as they pop on the screen, they're like, I need to tell you all the things. And you know what? Sometimes it's like that. I'm sure I'm like that with my spiritual director, God bless her. But having that time out of time to ask just what's rising. And then at the end, I always pray. I'm a prayer practice. And I always ask at the end, what shall I pray for in between? And I think that helps people focus. And when you aren't known to be praying people, I wish we were. It's one of my subversive like hopes that we'll get there. But to have somebody pray for you, I think, and know that they're praying for you, I think is just something really lovely.
Well, one thing that seems to happen, every person who is a spiritual companion is bringing their whole holy self and their authentic self to the experience. So while it may look similar with maybe a candle lighting, a poem, a piece of art, some sort of ritual to create the sacred container, and then conversation, listening, evocative questions, and witnessing, and then some sort of blessing or review or deepening and setting what you have received at the end. Each person will be bringing what's amazing about them as a companion to that session. So there isn't a typical, and that is part of what the training program is about, is I get to watch people discover what their gift is that they are bringing, which is the same thing that I get to experience as a spiritual companion, is that I get to watch the person with me struggle with divorce, struggle with death, struggle with who am I, struggle with whatever, and then unfold. Come broken-hearted and depleted, because this world, oh my goodness, this world right now, brokenheartedness is where we are, and just depleted. And I watch people break open. Go deeper into the brokenheartedness, break open, and instead of breaking down, they become more fully themselves. So beautiful to watch.
I love that word, Reverend Amy, that you said unfold. I think of spiritual direction time for myself as just like a place that I can, I do social justice work, and it's not always easy. And this week I've been spending the entire week at the Welcome Center for Refugees and Asylum Seekers. And I am there to help remodel their volunteer program, right? I am there to support their volunteer coordinator in her ideas to train volunteers. And that is my focus. And while I'm focusing on that, there are literally like children, my children's age, up and down the hallways, sick and exhausted and hungry from their traumatizing journeys. And that doesn't not affect me. And, I think in a lot of us, in a lot of our work, we have to compartmentalize a lot. And so, I put that in a compartment and keep doing my job, because I know I'm there for a specific reason, so that we can get volunteers trained to, provide aid. And when I know I have a spiritual direction day, I like mark it on my calendar, like that's the day I'm going to cry. And now I'm not necessarily recommending, I'm not saying I'm the picture of health and that this is, a model for mental health for social justice workers, but this is what I do to get through it. And having that space where I know that I can unfold and then make meaning of what I've seen and what I've done, and why I'm doing it and where I'm going next. I just can't emphasize enough how meaningful and important it is.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Amy.
At the conference I was just at, a trauma and spiritual direction trainer said spiritual direction is ideally suited for holding trauma. And I'm circling back to, if you need other supports, you need your whole team or your squad. But yes, spiritual direction work is ideally suited to hold folks. Go ahead, Michael. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just going to recount a little bit of my experience with spiritual direction too, because it got me through seminary in a certain way, and helped me become a minister. My spiritual director, we talked about my spiritual practices, and she knew that I had a certain spiritual practice, and we would end our sessions like, yes, we would do all this stuff that you're explaining, and we would end our sessions by opening our hearts to what my prayer would be for the time between when, between our sessions. Like what's the prayer that's in your heart this month? Like what is it that where is your spirit connecting with the divine right now, that you need to like spend time in your spiritual practice, right? So it was a way for me to be accountable in my spiritual practice to someone who I trusted held me in that way. And it was really a marvelous thing.
You know, a lot of people who go through the training will become professional spiritual directors and have a practice, put out a shingle, get a, you know, all that kind of stuff. A lot of people won't. And spiritual, you know, but you will take that ethos, take those practices out into the world. And that is life-saving and beautiful too. I wish that I knew how I was going to transform. I went in just to become a better listener. And I thought, oh, the Benedictines, they do that really well. And Sister Lucy, who's known me forever, said, get in the program. I'm like, what is this? And I just do what Sister Lucy says. And you would too. And the program just broke me absolutely open. And so that I'm a better mother. I'm a better wife. She can totally attest to this. I'm a better daughter. And a better friend. And I'm a better person sitting next to you on the bus, or when there's an emergency, or just when the world is burning. I want that for everyone. Yeah.
I see a question about cost. There are, Catholic spiritual directors who are living in community and their costs are covered for their livelihood, for their food and shelter, and can charge less. There are folks for whom this is what they need in order to live. So you can find $50 to $200 an appointment. The way I work, I learned, and a lot of my students have adopted something like this beautiful practice of pay from the heart, where you let people know what would sustain you, make it possible for you to live and put food on the table. And then the seekers find a number that works for them in their budget. And then you can agree to take them or not. So people are paying from the heart, and it actually works, which I think is just a beautiful applying spiritual direction perspective to the money piece.
I just want to put in a plug for some of our listeners when that question was about cost. If you're part of a UU community, if you're on the board or the finance team or the minister or religious professional, or even if you're someone who isn't on those teams but could influence those teams, I've seen it be a very wonderful practice to make sure that spiritual direction is part of your compensation package for your religious professionals. At the org where I work, it's covered for all of us, and I couldn't do the work I do without it. I don't see how religious professionals in congregational settings couldn't use this. So putting it as part of your compensation package, I think, is also a put your money where your mouth is. Do you want your religious professionals to be spiritually whole? And also justice practice of making sure that people are financially covered for the things they need to do their job.
Beat me to it. I have a sliding scale, and I use the fees that are suggested, the UUMA suggested fees. So a lot of my clients will pay between $100 and $150 a session. I do have a couple clients here in Tacoma who buy me coffee, and I know that is a stretch for them, and it is a divine cup of coffee. Yes.
Well, we are coming up to the top of the hour. Is there anything that you, Amy or Tandi, came in and just really wanted to make sure that folks knew? Now's the moment.
Know that the links to the programs are there in the chat. Do consider them, check them out. Yep.
Thank you. Thank you so much. What we said last week is kind of what I want to end with. These kinds of different paths of ministerial and faith formation at our seminaries are crucial. They're crucial to our faith being able to grow. They're crucial for our faith to be able to live. And I really appreciate that the work that you two have done to bring this to our seminaries in a way that they can support, and that we can continue to recognize that there needs to be multiple paths in what we would see as ministerial formation. I know that this isn't like specifically formation into a minister, but when I say ministerial formation, I'm talking about the full faith ministerial formation. And it's just, you know, as a minister who hasn't had that path, it is wonderful to see. And I really, really appreciate that it's there now and available. So thank you.
I do want to add one thing. The UU Spiritual Directors Network, uusdn.org, is a place to find spiritual directors, spiritual companions who understand Unitarian Universalism.
Thank you. Yes, we'll put that in the chat as well. Well, we are coming to the top of our hour. Tandi, do you want to take us out in a prayer for all of us? That would be lovely, if you're willing.
Spirit of life and love, I give such thanks for this most amazing day and these amazing servants who show up and show up and show up. Please bless those who are calling in and who will watch this later, and those who are part of the ministry in all sorts of ways, part of the Church of the Larger Fellowship ministry in so many ways that go unseen, except often by the people who are touched by them. And I have been one of them. Please help us see you and savor you throughout the day, and help us know that we are whole, holy, and precious. Amen.
Amen. Ashe, blessed be.
Thank you for joining
all.
us. Special
Thank you.
thanks to those of you who give generously to this ministry. It is because of you that this ministry is possible. You can click the link in the description to give now, or visit clfuu.org/give for more information. We hope you will join us next week for another episode of The View.